I usually don't enjoy racing games, particularly realistic ones, because I find them boring. However, recently I decided to check out a racing game just to differentiate it once in a while. And I, naturally, being a big fan of Sonic, decided to take a look at Team Sonic Racing. Now I know Sonic has had quite a few racing games, most of which were released in the last 10 years or so, but there's obviously Sonic R released in the 90s. I decided to look at Team Sonic Racing simply because it was the most recent one released. Team Sonic Racing is a kart racer similar in vein to Super Mario Kart. Each character has different stats in terms of speed and acceleration, and there's all kinds of power-ups you can use, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So this game has Team Adventure mode, local play, and then some multiplayer modes as a part of its playable game modes. Local play gives you the Grand Prix, Exhibition Race, and Time Trials. Exhibition Race also allows you to play a team race or a standard race. In this game, there are teams of 3 that you can race against, and there are different difficulties to select from, and even different options. Like you can customize the number of teams, the number of laps, or if it's a standard race, which isn't a team race, you can choose the number of racers on the track. This game has a pretty good diversity of tracks. Some of them are longer, some of them are shorter, some of them have wider lanes, and some don't. The Grand Prix mode simply just allows you to select a team or standard, and then you have to race a Grand Prix of 4 different tracks, and whoever comes in first once the tracks are finished wins. Now when it comes to the stat screen, you can just simply get a collection of stats that you've acquired over the course of playing, and I do think stats are interesting. Then you have a garage option, which does allow you to customize the racers, the performance parts, and then you can customize the color of the carts as well for each individual character. And we're going to get into the customization stuff just a little bit later, but my favorite part of racing games are always customization. That's what interests me the most. Now getting into the actual gameplay itself, it's a standard kart racer. I'd prefer characters with better handling, better acceleration, as opposed to power. But in this game, the team racing mechanic is obviously the main one. Now, you could do standard races, which is when you race individually without any of the team stuff. But whenever you do the standard races, it's just your usual racing game. There's nothing too special about it. But the team racing mechanic is absolutely where this game shines. Of course, much like Mario Kart, there are power-ups in this game in the form of wisps. There are the white wisps, which function similarly to the Sonic games, where they just give you a boost. And then you also have the rocket wisps. Now, the rockets act just like the shells in Mario, where you shoot them off. You can either fire them off in front or behind if there's an enemy behind you, and the rockets simply stun the enemies. Sometimes you'll also be able to flip the car during jumps in order to land on your wheels to get a boost, but if you mess it up, you do get stunned afterwards, so there's a pretty big risk-reward system to doing that. But you also might notice the blocks on the ground. There's like these cube wisps, and the cubes basically just act as hazards on the track. And then there was one wisp that's only really useful on the tracks with hazards, and that is the Ghost Wisp. Now, the Ghost Wisp just gives you invulnerability, and it allows you to pass through solid objects such as hazards and stuff like that. You have the Fire Trail, and the Fire Trail just will take out any enemy that's trailing closely behind you, but it's only effective from close distances, so you've got to be very, very mindful of that. Some tracks, like the bigger ones, will have hazards like on the sides of the road that will slow you down if you drive into them, such as the lava here. But of course, if you have the Ghost Wisp enabled, you'll just drive right over it, so it's very useful on the bigger tracks. And plus, some of the cars will bump into you from time to time, and the Ghost Wisp allows you to pass right through them. So it's very, very useful, but it's mostly useful on the tracks with hazards, more so than the standard tracks. One of my favorites is the bomb in this game, and you throw the bomb and you can hit an enemy and stun them, and it is possible to hit multiple enemies at once. It always feels really, really cool to hit maybe 2 or 3 enemies at the same time. I always felt that that was just the coolest portion of the bombs. And of course, you can even aim the car to throw the projectile in a certain direction, but as I said, the cubes are mostly just to create projectiles. The bombs were the most fun to me, but then again, for the bombs, they only travel a certain distance, and it's kind of hard to hit an enemy, but once you finally hit one, it feels really, really cool, especially when you hit 2 or 3 at the same time. So, as I said, some of the tracks will have hazards, and they will absolutely annihilate you. You've got to be very mindful of the hazards, and there are these other wisps that can create projectiles like that, or just create hazards, rather, that you have to narrowly avoid. And then there are the music note wisps that just kind of cover the screen with music notes. It's very, very similar to like the slime wisp from Mario Kart, which just covers the screen. But the wisps in this game, obviously, is what makes it most engaging, because if you just kind of drove around for 5 minutes, it wouldn't be that interesting after time. but using the power-ups, or wisps in this instance, is great. And there's even one that is invincible. It's the blue wisp capsule, and it turns you completely invincible. It's kind of like the invincibility star from the Mario Kart games. It's basically a homing missile. It locks onto the target that's in front of you, but it has a limited distance, so you have to kind of use it when you're close. Then there's the yellow wisp, which is the drill, which gives you complete invulnerability and it knocks every enemy out of the way. It doesn't last very long, but it could be used to gain maybe 3 or 4 positions if you are trailing behind. Then you have the team mechanics in this game. The team mechanics in this game are what makes it really interesting. So, one of the biggest team mechanics is a skim boost in this game, where if you ever get hit by a projectile or you get stunned, if a partner drives right next to you as you get stunned, you can recover faster and get a big burst of momentum. The skim boost can absolutely save you in a lot of instances, so just be mindful whenever you're close to your teammates. There's also a slingshot mechanic in this game. If you stay behind in your opponent's slipstream, you can get a giant boost as soon as you leave, giving you a large incentive to stay close to your teammates and to trail behind them constantly. The slingshot is very useful in this game, particularly during turns and drifts. And all this stuff leads to you getting what is called an ultimate. Once you charge your team meter, you can activate an ultimate, and this gives you a giant boost and you have complete invulnerability. And if your teammates use it at the same time as you, it lasts a little bit longer. I've discovered it's more useful to use this on the final lap, or maybe the final turn of the final lap, and then you and your partners can get a huge boost and it can propel you up in the rankings. And of course, once you complete a race, you get the ranking system. You look at your results. In this game, similar to Mario Kart, whatever position you finish determines how many points you get, or rather your team will get. And sometimes it really seems as if maybe you should have won and you actually don't win, or sometimes you win but you're not really sure about it. For example, in this instance, my team finished 1st, 4th, and 9th place, and then the green team finished 3rd, 5th, and 6th, and I still win. I think getting 1st place in this game gives you a huge advantage. Or sometimes you feel like maybe you should have won when you really didn't. Getting into the team adventure mode, which is basically the story mode, you have text cutscenes. These scenes are fully voice acted, which is very, very nice, but it's nothing but text screens across the background. There are no cutscenes in this game outside of the opening intro, and I really feel like maybe Team Adventure mode would have benefited if it had cutscenes, at least maybe occasional cutscenes every once in a while, but for Team Adventure, you just complete races. That's it. There are also some challenges, like drifting challenges, we have to maximize how many points you get, but overall, Team Adventure mode is just you completing a handful of races each chapter. Sometimes you'll have to do just an individual race, sometimes you'll have to do a Grand Prix, and then sometimes you'll have to do the drifting challenges from earlier. But what really holds this game mode back are just the lack of cutscenes. That really is what holds us back. I think it would have been much, much more interesting with cutscenes, but whatever, you have the fully voice-acted text screens. So you have a stage select as well. Whenever you complete a stage, you just simply advance on to the next one, and then you do this until you finish it. Now, the whole story of this game is Robotnik has set up a big giant race to bait Sonic, and it's the usual Sonic stuff, where Robotnik is up to no good, and Sonic and his friends must use carts to stop him in races. Completing races, as well as advancing through Team Adventure mode, will grant you credits, which is a virtual currency that exists in this game, and you can spend these credits on what are called mod pods, which unlock cosmetic items and even some bonus boxes that grant you extra bonuses before races. Now I know what you're saying. Wow, this game has virtual currency as well as microtransactions. However, these don't use real money. These are just money you earn through completing races that unlock cosmetic items. And this game is quite generous with the amount of credits that you get, so you have a ton of mod pods just by completing races. And they're pretty cheap. They only cost 10 credits per race, and usually you earn about 20 to 30 credits per race. So the mod pods unlock cosmetic items, which allow you to change the color and even the overall design of every character's carts. I always thought the customization is the coolest part of this game, and I really like customizing the cars and kind of personalizing them for each of the characters. You can change the color, the material, and even the vinyl design across the sides of the car. You can make a car more of a matte finish, or you can make it shinier if you prefer. I really liked this tails design here, just making the car a matte black finish and giving the sides and even the tip of the car a gold orange, kind of giving it the appearance of gold, as I said earlier. And for Rouge, I decided to give her just a metallic purple car. I thought this looked really, really cool. So most of my enjoyment from this game, outside of races, is the customization. And granted, I haven't played very many racing games in my life, but I really do like the customization aspect. And then you have the performance parts that you can unlock. These do change the designs of the car, but at the same time, it also changes the statistics of the car. So, for example, you might really, really like this one design of a car, but it takes away from your drifting ability, giving you a little bit more acceleration. And the trade-off of having a little bit more acceleration might not necessarily be worth losing a ton of boost capability. So if you want to give the car an overall better performance, you do have to kind of pick and choose which parts. You might really, really like how this one part looks. However, you lose a lot of drift boost while gaining a little bit of top speed. So the trade-off might not necessarily be worth it. If you really like getting giant boosts out of drift, you might have to choose another part over the one you really, really like just to maximize the performance of the car. But I thought that was an interesting mechanic though, because it kind of caters towards you really like this one character and you can kind of modify them to fit your particular playstyle. For me personally, I preferred cars having a good amount of acceleration and a good amount of handling at the trade-off of kind of losing some defense. I don't play racing games very often, which you've heard me repeat multiple times. I really want you to know this, but Team Sonic Racing is a very, very enjoyable game. I really don't enjoy racing games, but I liked this one, and maybe it's just confirmation bias because I'm a huge fan of Sonic, and plus kart racers are generally interesting to me. I don't like realistic racing games, I find them boring. However, Team Sonic Racing, as I said, was very, very enjoyable, and I liked it a lot. I even liked hearing some of the Team Sonic Racing soundtrack, which included some songs from Sonic R. However, no TJ Davis, but whatever, what are you going to do, right? We're all Supersonic Racing, really, despite the fact that Supersonic is not in this game, but what are you going to do? Overall, I give Team Sonic Racing a 7 out of 10.